are gathering casually to, I think one of the great things that we find in the organization and in the field is just sharing the great brain trust and experience of everybody and great ideas of the field together. So this is an opportunity where Kabir is going to help facilitate this conversation about engaging audiences in professional development, likely K-12 teachers, but probably other audiences as well. And really thrilled to see you there. We are a volunteer-run organization, so if there's a topic that you want to see us touch on, please add that in the chat or connect with us outside of this. I'll add my email into the chat. But we want to make sure that we're doing things that are useful to you all. So please share if you're interested in helping to facilitate a chat, if you're interested in getting more involved in NAEA. Can talk a little bit more about that. One thing I like to remind people of is, yes, you are ready to take on a leadership position in NAEA. Don't feel like you have to have reached some magical point in your career or done XYZ. This is a really great supportive group that helps you through the whole process, and it's a really amazing group of people too. So I encourage everyone to get involved. All right, I will stop my rambling and turn things over to Kabir.
So thanks so much, Julene. So you'll see, you probably saw something pop up on your screen that said that we're recording, and this will be, these will be available online. The sections that are, we're gonna have one section where we'll go into breakout rooms, and that part won't be recorded, but the other part will be recorded so that you, so that this can be used as a resource for other museum educators and educators in the future. And then you should see also, right now we're launching a poll, and there's just 2 quick questions to get a sense of what your experiences have been so far with leading online PD and doing things online. So I think I should introduce myself. My name is Kabir Singh. My pronouns are he, him, and I work for the national organization, Visual Thinking Strategies. I recently took on a role as the manager of online learning, as well as being a VTS trainer. And I am based in Los Angeles, and so I serve on the NAEA Museum Education Development Committee with Julene as the Pacific Regional Representative. So I'm here sort of in both of those roles today. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen. I have kind of a brief presentation that I'll share, and I have an agenda there so that you'll know kind of what to expect. Okay. So we're gonna start off, we started off with our brief introductions. For the next 10 or 15 minutes or so, I'm just gonna go over some Zoom tips, tools, and settings, things that I have learned alongside my colleagues at VTS in the online PD and online image discussions that we have been leading in the last 3 months or so. We'll get into breakout rooms for 5 minutes to have some reflections and for everyone also to have the experience of being in a breakout room in Zoom. And then we'll come back, we'll really spend the majority of this time together in a whole group moderated discussion where everyone's welcome to bring their questions and learnings from working with Zoom and leading PD on Zoom. So just for some context of what, if you are familiar with the method of the organization Visual Thinking Strategies, VTS is a method for, it's an object-based teaching method for leading discussions of artworks. And here's an example of how it looks in person, or one way it can look in person, in a museum gallery. where a group is gathered around an artwork and talking about it. And a facilitator is paraphrasing comments and also pointing to the image. So that's something that is part of the in-person process that needs to translate online. So some of our guiding questions as we were transitioning the work that we do online were these. First off, how do we build community online? So just really thinking for all of our professional development that we lead with, as Julian said, K through 12 teachers, we also work with, we support museum educators too in their learning of the VTS method. We also work with medical professionals who use the visual thinking strategies method in their capacity. So those are, I would describe that as our three biggest audiences. So, but building community in our group of educators is always something that's essential. And so how does that translate online? So that was something that we wanted to solve for. And then next, really thinking about what are the tools and settings in Zoom that we need to use to have successful image discussions. So translating what we do, what it looked like in that image before, with my colleague Em Miller was leading a VTS discussion in that image, and how do we translate that over to an online setting? And with that, sort of a sub question of that are, what aspects of the platform do we need to teach participants in order to ensure success? So that sort of leads to the next slide that I'll share. And so as a part of all of our online programs, which so far have been teacher PD, we've led our beginner practicum in an online format. It's normally a 2-day in-person workshop teaching people the VTS method, which we translated to 6 2-hour workshops, 6 2-hour workshops spread out over 3 weeks. So sort of more like a college style class, meeting twice a week for 2 hours at a time. And as well as our weekly free Look Club online program. And so that's a program where we, individuals from around the world tune in and have VTS discussions of images together as a group. So those are mostly our 3 programs that we have been leading online so far. And we've begun each of these programs with a discussion of online community practices. And so we have a set for our in-person programs, we have a set of in-person practices, which I won't go into in great detail right now, but they include, thinking, being conscious about how much space your voice is taking up in a conversation, et cetera. But we've found that having online community practices, in addition to our typical in-person community practices, to be so essential. So some of those community practices that we encourage folks to follow are keeping their cameras on if possible. And that's something that really helps build community. So right now I'm sharing my slides, and you probably maybe are just seeing my face or seeing a couple people's faces. You don't see everyone's face on the call. I'll show you in a second how you can adjust your screen to see more faces at a time. But that time when someone's not sharing their screen and you can be in gallery view, looking at everyone's faces, it's essential to have our cameras on and to be able to help build community online. In addition to that, making sure that your name and pronouns appear on screen and using that rename function in Zoom. Julian already mentioned it, and I'll walk everyone through that as well. These 2 things, I mean, this is really essentially kind of like having a name tag when you're at a PD. So that's how that translates. Keeping other tabs on your device closed. I myself have been so guilty of trying to send emails while being on webinars. and not remembering anything that was said on the webinars when that happens. So that's a really important community. In order to be fully engaged with the work, you need to keep your other tabs closed and your phone on silent, only for emergencies. We stay muted if we're not talking. Raise hands, and the raise hands can sort of happen two ways. And the group needs to agree on how it will happen. So there's a function within Zoom where you can raise your hand, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. When you're in smaller groups, I've found if you're able to see everyone's face on the screen, it can actually just be really useful to raise your hand in front of the camera. And I just recommend picking one and making sure everyone agrees on that, because where I found it tricky is if I'm trying to manage looking at camera hands and other hands, it's helpful to just have an agreement to do one thing. Use the chat function sparingly, and that's particularly in our image discussions. It can just be really distracting when the chat function is being used, and so that's something that we encourage people to do. But we've tried to find creative places of when the chat function can be really useful and really kind of sort of speed things up that might have taken longer to have conversations about if we were in person. So not so much during image discussions, but at other times in a PD for reflections, the chat function can be really useful. And then the last thing is just take care of yourself. We're living through a global pandemic, and we're living through a time of attention to social change with the Black Lives Matter movement, and there's a lot that we are all feeling all the time. And so I think it's really just essential to prioritize, if you need to step away at any point, don't feel guilty. So that's another essential thing. So here I'll walk you through some tools that we share with everyone on our program. So this first one is about the raise hand and rename. And so this is at the bottom of your screen right now. You should see this toolbar that has a participant box. And when you click on that participant box, it will pop up a list of everyone's names, including your own. Your own name is usually at the top. And then down at the bottom over here, there's this blue hand that is raise hand, and you can press that, and that's how to raise your hand. And then in addition, as Julian said, when you hover your hand over your name, you can click that rename. You can also edit your profile picture if you'd like to do that. That's sort of a little bit more advanced and not always necessary, but sometimes nice to have. All of these things can also, these two things at least, can also be done on a phone or a tablet. So it may look a little bit different, but people just need to look for that participant function, and that's how they raise their hand and rename themselves. And same thing on a tablet, just looking for that participant function. So then another thing that we found really helpful to share with people as they are taking part in image discussions, when someone is sharing an image as a slide on their screen, is just the viewing options while a presenter is sharing their screen and showing an image. So those are things that you can, since I'm sharing my screen right now, you can play around with these settings right now. And the sort of two places under, over here under view options, so at the top of the screen, it should say you're viewing Kabir Singh's screen, and then you'll be able to click on view options. And there should be, these different options will come up. You can choose, I really recommend this side-by-side mode. So it takes, instead of looking at a film strip or one person kind of on top on the right hand, it sort of separates out the images of people and the images of the slide. And then the fit to window makes the slide really fit easily. But if you want to zoom in, you can zoom in, and just we recommend always not to follow people's presenter pointer because the image can kind of jump around if you have that selected. So those are things to note. Yeah, so I see a question in the chat box that the rename place is a great place to, and Mac has already answered that. It's a great place to rename yourself. So, and then when you've gone into, if you've gone into the side-by-side mode, it should look like this. And you can toggle back and forth between speaker view and gallery view. And then this button here too is you can sort of stretch it out to make people smaller or people bigger. And I find that really helpful. You know, if you're in a group of say 10 people, you can still see everyone and the image at the same time. So then the last thing too about screen configuration options is they look different when you are the presenter. So they, sorry, there was some annotating that happened. Oh, and my mouse is, uh-oh. The thing I love about Zoom, no matter how comfortable you feel with the process, there's always something that will come up. My cursor seems to have disappeared because I'm in the drawing function. Yikes. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm back to a mouse. Okay, that's just gonna, there's a drawing. There we go. There we go. Okay, taken care of. Constantly learning, always things that come up. So when you are the presenter, your screen will look different. There's not, to my knowledge, there is not the option for a side-by-side mode, but you can move around and make bigger the image that you see. So when you're you won't have this option right now, but when you are sharing your own screen, on the strip, it sort of normally populates, it looks kind of like a film strip where you'll see like 2 or 3 people on the, or 3 or 4 people on the right side of your screen. If you click on this box, the grid, that allows you to see more people, and you can sort of stretch it and make it bigger to see, again, if you're in a group with 5, 6, 7 people, that allows you to see everyone. It will cover part of your screen as you're presenting, but if you are, as long as you can handle that and want that, it's sort of an option to be able to see more people as you're presenting. So I'm just going to go over a few more things that are not about viewing, but this is something, I didn't do this before presenting today, but in, this is in a Mac, but this is also possible in a PC. You can increase the size of your cursor. So right now my cursor is actually kind of small. It's its normal size, but you can increase the size of your cursor so that it is more visible. And that's something that we found really helpful with VTS facilitation online, because the pointing and seeing a presenter's pointer is so helpful. So I'm going to walk us through a couple settings in the desktop client. So basically in your, if you are running Zoom from a downloaded version, a downloaded application on your desktop, which is what I recommend if that's possible. There are kind of 3 different ways to get to settings. So you can go to preferences kind of up at the top at zoom.us. When you're just sort of open to a window, you can go into, you can click settings there. And then you can also kind of right now even, you can click on, there's a caret right next to where your video is, and there it says FaceTime HD camera, choose virtual background, and then video settings. And then video settings will pop this up. So one thing that I found, one tool I found extremely helpful with leading online PD and building community, once people have made sure that they have their names and their pronouns on, if you click this setting, always display participant name on their videos, I found that so helpful to be able to see people's names all the time. Because if it's not clicked, you will sometimes see those names, but when you go into present, you won't. So that's a useful thing, a useful setting. I also really find this, if you are used to using Zoom and every time you join a Zoom call, it asks you whether you want to join by computer audio or not, and you always want to join by computer audio, then I just really recommend clicking this setting, join audio by computer when joining a meeting, and then it will just skip that step and it won't pop up. You won't have to do it each and every time. Lastly, with the, there's some settings for share screen. You can set up your desktop client to automatically go into side-by-side mode when someone's sharing their screen, which I find super helpful. You can also minimize or take away silent system notifications when sharing desktop. And that's something, that's a setting that, so when like I'm presenting, I'm sharing my desktop or a presentation right now. That way I will, by not silencing system notifications, I will see when someone types in the chat box or if there's something that comes up. The automatic setting is that it is silenced. So that's something I do recommend going in and changing if you find it helpful to be able to see things as you check. And then lastly, I'm just going to show you some advanced settings for setting up breakout rooms. And then I'm going to set up the breakout rooms and take us there. So this is exactly what I'm going to do to take you there. When you are the host, so you will not, I'm the host right now, so no one will be seeing this, but you will see this breakout rooms tab pop up on the bottom of your screen. You click on that, and it'll give you the option to assign breakout rooms automatically or manually. You decide how many rooms you want to have, and then you click create breakout rooms. It doesn't open them up right away. It gives you the option to edit them. So you can even, if you just need to open them up to play with the settings first, you can always go to this recreate if things have happened, if people have joined the meeting since you've originally opened the breakout rooms, you can just recreate them and it will nullify the previous breakout rooms and create new breakout rooms for you, which I found that to be really helpful. And so under this options is where you can go to advanced settings. And here are some that I find useful. It can be really useful. You might not always want to do this, but to move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. That way they're just sort of shuffled directly there rather than having something pop up on their screen that they have to click on. You can allow participants to return to the main session at any time. So that's helpful if someone's in the main session and monitoring it and can help someone if they have a question. You can set up the breakout rooms to close automatically after a certain amount of minutes. And then when you do that, there'll be a timer at the top for every participant so that they can see how long the breakout room is going to last. And so I'm going to do that when I create the breakout rooms so that you can all see how much time you have to reflect. And then you can ask to be notified if time is up. That's for you as a host, so you get to end the breakout rooms. And then you can set an amount of buffer for when the breakout rooms are going to close and then when they actually do. And I think a 60-second buffer is really great. It gives people time to sort of wrap up their conversations without really abruptly ending, but also it sort of keeps people moving along quickly, which is something that's a really, I think, added bonus to being able to lead PD online rather than in person. Getting people to come back to the group in person can be a huge challenge. So,
I just jump in real quick, just
yeah.
that one thing that's great about breakout rooms is you can and you alluded to this briefly, but I just want to reiterate it, is that you can automatically assign people to breakout rooms, but then you as the host can still move people around, which if you've got a whole bunch of people on a call is nice for having done this with a docent training, is like create a bunch of breakout rooms, but then being able to make sure that there's a staff person in each room, basically. But instead of having to manually do all that.
Thanks, Julie. And I'll add something, a tip that we use when we're assigning breakout rooms for our Look Club. We always have our VTS at the end of our names, and that really helps the person who's assigning breakout rooms to really easily put a staff person in each room. So that's another tip to add to that. Okay, so I'm going to create breakout rooms in a second. And I'm going to give you some reflection prompts to consider. And I'll drop these in the chat box as well so that you have access to them. But for those of you who've led online PD so far, what successes or challenges have you had leading online PD? And for those people who are still kind of haven't quite yet, or perhaps even for people who have, what are your concerns or questions about leading online PD? So I'm going to create some breakout rooms. You'll have 5 minutes to talk. I'm gonna put everyone into groups of 4 or 5 people. So you'll have some time to chat with. Everyone should be able to talk. And let me just, I'm gonna drop, 1 second, I'm just gonna drop that. Drop the prompts into the chat box so that everyone has access to them. Okay, so I'm gonna just open up our rooms and I'll see everyone in, I'll open up our rooms and I'll see everyone in 5 minutes. So hi everyone, thanks for coming back. And it looks like it looks like all the groups are back. Everyone came back right away. There was no lingering. So thank you. So I really appreciated the kind of the discussion, the thoughts that people had to share in the group that I was in. And so really just want to open it up for the remainder of, we have 25 minutes left for this time together. So if there are things that came up, questions that came up within your breakout rooms, if you'd like to start off, I think maybe typing it into the chat box would be a great way to kind of start that off, and we can sort of track what some of the questions, concerns, challenges, or successes leading online PDs were. And then if you'd like to say something though and share it with the wider group in that way, please feel free to raise your hand using the participants function in blue hand, and then we can call on you that way. So, so question from Kim. Hi, Kim. Thanks for being here. Is can there be more than one host, and how do we do that? And so you can have co-hosts. So right now, the way that we've set this up, Julene has made me the host, and then I made her the co-host. There are a few functions that only the host can do, and that's one of those functions is opening up the breakout rooms. The person who is the host needs to be the person who opens breakout rooms, but most of the other functions can be handled by the co-host. One thing in your Zoom account, the Zoom account that you're using, you will need to make sure that co-hosts are enabled under the settings. And those are, so I showed you the settings on your desktop client, but if you go to the general settings and you go to the bottom of there, it says more settings, and then it'll open up a web, just a web browser with more settings through zoom.us, and that's where you can adjust those settings. Yeah, Kim.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Hi.
Hi.
So when you say that the host opens the breakout rooms, can both host and co-host create them if we are doing it manually where we're picking, or is that just the host that makes the room?
The host needs to create them and assign who goes into where.
Okay, so that's all the hosts
That's all the
okay.
hosts.
Okay.
Yeah, as the co-host, I don't have any access to breakout rooms at all.
Great. Okay,
so
perfect. Thank you.
Once you open up breakout rooms, the co-host does have access to switching between different breakout rooms, which is something that participants don't have, but that's the only kind of whoever's. So what I guess what I recommend is whoever, if you're co-presenting with someone, which I think is ideal, it's hard to present on your own on Zoom. But if you're co-presenting with someone, whoever is not talking should be the one who's the host at the time that you need to create the breakout rooms. Let's see, some more questions. So from Mary Cronin, great suggestion to have people move physically at some point to cut down on Zoom fatigue. And co-hosts are important in case your internet goes out. Absolutely, that's a question that came up in my group. From Sarah, and how do you say your last name? I'm so sorry.
Ozarumba.
Ozarumba, thank you. Can you drop more than prompts into the chat box, like an image? So I think Julian has just dropped an image, and I didn't know that, so thank you. That's great. One of the things that I was most excited about is the opportunity to learn from everyone too. So I'm just excited by this. Let's see. So from Mac, from Tacoma Art Museum, hi Mac. Also important to ensure screen share is enabled on your Zoom account before the meeting. You can't change that setting to allow screen share during the meeting if it's off. You can change who is allowed to screen share. But yeah, so found that out the hard way in the middle of a workshop. And I would say, yeah, I like to add to that and build on that, as much as you can sort of play around. I've been in so many Zoom calls, like right at the end of March, early April, I was in so many Zoom calls with myself just to play around with settings, just to get more comfortable with Zoom. And you can tune into the same Zoom call from different devices too. So I was in, most of the screenshots that I took from my presentation, I was hosting from my phone and then taking screenshots as a participant on my computer. And so you can sort of play around with this, like what it looks like as a host, what it looks like as a participant that way. I totally recommend if you learn kind of that way. Certainly, like I learn experientially, and that's how kind of things up. So everyone loves Julian's dog. Let's see, question from Emily. Any strategies people have used for reporting out in interesting, engaging ways about discussions that take place in breakout rooms? So I'll open that up to the group. Does anyone have, I know there was a hand from Kelly, but probably about something else. Or no? Yeah, go ahead. So good to see you, Kelly. Oh, Kelly, you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm having some sound issues today. Kabir and I used to work together, so I'm really thrilled to be here because I adore him. let's see. I was just sharing with my group number 4 that I have not led Teacher PD. Our museum's under construction, but if you were in the Peer2Peer last week, you know that I have been leading, I led Zoom classes for 125 participants at once. And we would go into breakout rooms, and then there were 4 teachers leading it at once, because it was such a large group of ELA students, 6th graders. And sometimes the teachers would have like a spinner, and it would be like spin, 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 and you could see it on his shared screen and be like, all right, group number 6 is sharing out. The students in general, when I would do the art making, they were pretty engaged, but in the ELA part, you had to call on them. So that was a good way to force groups to speak out by calling on not particular individuals, which the teachers also did, but also calling on different
But on a group.
fun spinner, and everyone was like, not my group, not my group. And then someone would have to do it. So I would recommend that for a group.
That sounds great. And was that a specific app that the teacher was using, or web spinner?
I can ask him. I think that you could get online, like I bet you've all seen teachers use them before, like teacher counters, teacher spinners, teacher, like where it's like a randomizer. And I don't know which one he used, but I can find out.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Kelly. So good to see you. Let's see. So some more things came in from the chat box. So we have, I think, yeah, that's a great answer to Emily's. The things that I've mostly done is have people write things in the chat box, but I think like having a spinner, having something more engaging is absolutely great. And please feel free to chime in if anyone has additional tips for that. So Julie Blair has written in, I did an 8-hour Zoom on Tuesday. The host made us all stand up and breathe every 20 minutes. So yeah, super helpful to breathe. And we at VTS, when we've designed our online programs, they have all been at most 2 hours at a time. And that's the way that we've structured them. And we've had, for our 2-hour sessions, we take a 10-minute break halfway through, just to really give people a chance to turn off their cameras, get some me time, step away. So Julian, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I've heard from a bunch of different places that like 30 minutes is a good, like I think 20 to 30 minutes, like some kind of break is really helpful. The other thing I wanted to just throw into with the virtual system is, even if a group knows each other outside of Zoom, building in some time for some kind of like get acquainted or getting used to each other in the Zoom space, especially if they're not regular Zoom users, can be really helpful. So like, even if people know each other, don't assume they know each other in this venue.
Thanks, Julian. So there's another tip from Mac that you can rename your breakout rooms. So rather than breakout room 1, breakout room 2, etc., which is what they automatically are named, you can give them names, and that can help you with the assignment. And you can assign them in advance too. So I guess I will ask a question to Mac or to anyone else. I've had difficulty when I've tried to assign breakout rooms to people when they are not when they have not logged in yet. And how have you gotten that to work, Mac, or anyone else?
I think you can create the breakout rooms in advance and then assign people as they show up. So if you wanted to say like, oh, we're gonna have 5 breakout rooms, and this group is talking about topic A, this group is talking about topic B, you could make your topics A, B, C, D, and E breakout rooms, and then you just say, hey, Kim's in this one, Kabir's in that one, as people log in.
Awesome. So you can create the rooms and then assign them as people are coming. Great. Let's see. So yeah, we had a tip about using, creating your own reaction cards on note cards, that it worked well with teens. That sounds really fun to me. Yeah, you can only kind of do this or this, which, you know, sometimes you might want to do this. But it's nice that Zoom is so positive though. But, and then Julene dropped in a spinner tip from Kelly about logging in from 2 devices if you can to see the whole class. I've heard from people, I'm sort of working on a very tiny laptop at home, but from people who have multiple screens, I think there's great things to, if you have in your home office a computer with multiple screens, I think there are lots of things that you can do with Zoom on that.
Or you can do, sorry to interrupt, Kabir.
No, go for it. Just
your laptop. I've done laptop, iPad, phone to try and see as many people as possible. And also, I think I mentioned in the last peer-to-peer that I was doing drawing exercises. So I'd use one iPad to draw with the screen share for a whiteboard, and then laptop, other iPad to look at the students, and then phone to try and follow the chat. So I don't recommend that though. It's too many.
Yeah, that's a lot for one person. I think what
Yes.
we've found in these, you know, the peer-to-peer weeklies is that it helps to have, Kabir is clearly a pro, but it helps to have somebody else to just keep an eye on chat or this or that or hand raised,
Yes.
to be able to just be like, okay, this person's going to go next, and this person, then this person.
Yes, that is definitely true. There were 4 of us that were co-hosts, but please know that sometimes in the chat, especially if you're working with younger audiences, students, or people that are not as comfortable on Zoom, people can think that they are sending a message just to you as the host, and they could be sending it to another host or to the group, and it's not to the group, or etc. Also, if you're working with students, let them know that you get to see the whole chat at the end of the thing. Apparently, that wasn't a problem when I started, because I started about a month after we went on lockdown, but the kids were chatting on the side like, this is boring, blah, blah, blah. And the teachers in like meeting number 3 were like, by the way, we read your chat. So.
Private in one sense, but not another. So there are some more questions in the chat box, and also feel free to raise your hand if you want to jump in, or even, you know, I think I can see everyone, and Julian, can you see everyone too? So if you want to raise your hand like this, that's also okay. I know there was a question from Kim about polls. Julian, can you speak to that, or anyone else?
Yeah, they're pretty easy. So if you are the host, if you are the controller of the Zoom account, you can actually create the poll in advance, which is what I've done. So I don't know if there's a limit to the number of questions, but it seems like, you know, you can write the question, you can add all the options, and then you have the choices to whether it's a single choice or multiple choice, or, you know, select multiple answers. And I didn't do it before, but you can have people answer the poll, and now I can share the results so you all can see the results. I just didn't do that earlier because it didn't seem good for the flow. But that's a definite nice option too, again, as people get in and get acclimated.
Thanks, Julene. So let's see, we have, so question from Mac, which some people answered. So has anyone done any workshops that include both live meetings and asynchronous stuff before, after, between meetings, like interacting via social media or a chat, and did that work? And I'll answer that from our work at VTS. We had some videos of lectures that we had participants watch, and we were using Google Classroom as a place for people to we just used the class comment section, so people could write in, and every participant could read each other's reflections. And then let's see, so Cody answered Mac's question. I'm planning some teacher PD where teachers come to the museum after the PD to do some investigating and gallery activities on their own. They'll contribute to a little gallery post activity. And then Bella wrote in, hi Bella, good to see you, that you are planning to try out Padlet as a supplement to Zoom for an upcoming teacher PD. And Bella, do you want to say more about Padlet?
We've actually just started looking into it. Originally, we were thinking of having Mural. It's for the 4-day Summer Teacher Institute, which Kabir will be one of the speakers for. But we wanted to have a place where teachers could share the things they were creating, as well as photos and ideas, something that's additional to all of these meetings with all of these talking heads. So we're just getting started with it. We have a month. A little less than a month. The countdown has started.
I'm curious to see how Padlet goes, because we're actually going to be using it for the NAEA board meeting, and then I don't know if anybody's doing the leadership program through NAEA. Padlet's part of that too. So
yes, and the ED&I Commission is using it as well.
Okay.
So, and we've just started with that. So we're all at the beginning of the learning curve.
So opportunities to report out and find out what we think of Padlet. All right. More thoughts, questions, concerns, learnings to share with the group. We have about, I think, six more minutes.
one thing that came up, Kabir, was thinking about accessibility in terms of like physical accessibility, but also equity in terms of requesting people to turn on a camera, but if they don't have great internet where they are, or also balancing that with taking care of yourself, like maybe I just need not to be on camera today, and just how to address that in welcoming people and making sure that people can participate in a way that works for them.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that since that's one of our community practices at VTS, and it's sort of keep your cameras on with the qualification of when possible. So just acknowledging that there may be technology reasons that people can't have their cameras on, or perhaps religious reasons, or other reasons they can't have cameras on, or just it's part of the taking care of yourself. You need to, it's really late where you're tuning in from, and you want to be taking this call from bed, and you don't want people seeing you. So that's why it's encouraging the cameras on if you can, but not pressuring anyone to have their cameras on if they can. So yeah, and that's a sort of an accessibility thing that some computers at museums don't have cameras. Oh yes, so I did use PowerPoint for the slides that I shared, and Julie, anything? I guess I would say I really just when I use PowerPoint, I share my screen just with the PowerPoint the window, PowerPoint window, rather than the whole desktop, and then I go to present, and it takes up my whole screen, and then I see some faces on top of it. Does that answer your question? Are there more questions there about PowerPoint and presenting on Zoom?
So somebody suggested that it was a good idea when you do your PowerPoint to kind of toggle in and out. So maybe a little bit PowerPoint and then some of your FaceTime, and then back to the PowerPoint, back to your face. But I wasn't quite sure how to do that. So, or do you do that?
Yeah, so I My rule has just been to try to use PowerPoint when I absolutely need to, but not if there's a time where normally in person in a presentation, I would have kind of a slide up with a reflection question. That's when I drop it. I sort of initially share it on my PowerPoint, and then I stop sharing and drop it into the chat box so people can see it there still, but that we can see, kind of get into gallery view and see lots of faces. So that's kind of the way that I've handled that. And really just you can stop sharing and then start sharing again. Sort of that's the technical way to do that. And you can also pause sharing too is another option. I tend not to do that though. I tend to let's see, playing videos in Zoom. Let's see, I might have skipped some questions though, actually. I want to make sure that I'm getting to, oh, captioning. Emily, do you want to talk more about captioning? That's something I would love to learn from that too, about how you do that.
I haven't done as much, but colleagues of mine have done that. And there's an Otter AI program that works pretty well. I know the museum also did some things with people who do live captioning, but there are products under development through Zoom actually that they expect to have out later this summer for Zoom to have its own live captioning. So I think that's something to look out for. But that is something that we've heard a lot of, just the benefits of having that captioning for audiences who need it, and even for people for whom, just from a universal design perspective, it's useful. I just was learning from our accessibility manager about also things that we can do for people who are both deaf and blind, and I don't have that information. I have some links somewhere. If someone wants to send me a message, I can try to send that. And I just saw the Chicago Cultural Center link was shared in here, and the Chicago Cultural Consortium. I don't know, Mac, if that also speaks to some of these possibilities.
Yeah, they talk a little bit about captioning and how to pin a video if you have an ASL interpreter and stuff like that as well, and best practices for sharing your screen with accessible text. It's really solid.
Great, thanks for those tips. And then it seems like the last thing, there were some questions about playing videos in Zoom via PowerPoint, and some responses that that sound is a major factor. And Terry, do you want to jump in? No, or you have to go. Yes. So it is. It's the hour. Thank you all so much for being here. I am happy to stay on for a minute or two more if anyone has anything more they want to say, but lovely to see you all, and thank you so much.
And next week, we'll be continuing our conversation about virtual field trips, because there's so much to talk about, and definitely addressing how to charge, how much to charge, and all that good stuff. So thanks so much, Kabir. This was awesome.
Julian, do you have a link to that peer-to-peer for next week that you could drop in the chat?
Yes, I will.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks everyone so much for coming. It's so good to see familiar faces and new faces. Stop recording.